Okay, so welcome to today's Equality CPD session, which is focusing on autism. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Amy Bryden, and I'm the Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Officer at Borders College. And I'm joined today by some really brilliant guests who, between them, share a massive amount of knowledge and experience on the topic of autism, from the perspective of having lived experience and from the perspective of being an ally and an advocate. So the title of this particular session is Support Begins with Understanding. When Alan and I were planning for this, we met up with some of our panelists to sort of pull it all together, and they really echoed that sentiment that whenever we are supporting people in a minority group, it's really important to understand their experiences in their own words in order to create the most inclusive and supportive environments that we can. And I also think that to develop understanding, it's really important to listen to people's stories as well from their perspective. So that's why we're really delighted to have our guests that are with us today. So a huge thank you again for joining us. This is our second session of the day. So thank you very much. We have one person that wasn't able to attend from our panel, Kelsey, who's a current student at Borders College. She had some really interesting reflections on her time at college. So if you would like to hear a bit more about that, we do have a recording from that session, which we'll share with everybody, and we'll make it available. So you can go back and see what Kelsey had to say. So to kick things off, I'm just going to introduce or ask our panel to introduce themselves. So if you can just give your name and your role, or what you're doing at the moment, if you're at school or college. Pauline, I'll start with you. Can you introduce yourself?
Hi everybody, I'm Pauline Grigger and I'm the Autism Community Coordinator for Scottish Borders Council, funded to the IGB board, and I've been an advocate for autism for probably about 15, 20 years maybe. And I'll pass you over to Sean now.
Hi, I'm Sean Kennedy. I'm just a bloke who got diagnosed with autism only 10 years ago, and I live in the Borders. Anyway, since the diagnosis, which was actually Asperger's more specifically, anyway, an autism spectrum condition, I think they called it. I've spent some time occasionally getting out and speaking about my own personal experiences relating to, as I see it anyway, relating to autism. It's been a while, but I'm going to attempt to do that again.
Thank you, Sean. Can I pass over to Eve and Emma, please, to introduce yourselves?
Hi, I'm Eve. I'm homeschooled and I'm going to college in September to study animal care, and this is my mom, Emma.
Hi.
Thank you so much. And Alan?
Oh, my mic on. Hi, I'm Alan Walk, learning support specialist here at the college, and I've got a number of years of experience in further education, higher education, working with students and young people with autism.
Great, thank you. So we're going to kick off with Pauline, who's going to give a short presentation on the Scottish Borders Autism Strategy, which is going to be really helpful in setting a bit of context for today's discussion. And after that, we're going to head into a panel discussion where we're going to explore lived experience of autism in educational settings. So we hope that this will just be a little dialogue between our panelists. But again, just to remind you, if you've got any questions, pop them in the chat and we'll try and get round to answering as many of them as possible. Okay, so Pauline, over to you.
Hi, so I'll go through this slide quickly. This is the kind of boring bit, but I just put together a couple of slides for everybody just to say that the Scottish Government has had a review of autism and it's presented its findings. And part of those findings is to create a refresh in the autism, and there will be a new autism strategy, although not for another year or so. So part of what Scottish Borders Council have done is to look at the strategy and to revisit the strategy and to refresh the local strategy. So they've employed me as the autism coordinator to focus more on the community work that's happening and to build capacity and development. And my role is a partnership between Scottish Autism and myself. So we'll just move to the next slide. Oh, here we go. So there's specific aims in the new partnership role, the vision for my role, which is, you'll get a copy of the slides at the end, but it's just to raise awareness of autism in the Scottish Borders. And it's around changing what people think are some very outdated thoughts about autism, relating to various movies back in the day, and just to look at where we are with autism and people's understanding of autism. We want to update that and change the narrative and change the context around that. And ultimately want to improve the lives of the autistic community, and working with Scottish Autism will bring in the national expertise that we need to bring into that. So we want to create a point of contact, which will be myself, but there's ongoing works currently at the moment with CAMS and various other organisations at linking together a lot of the information around the new neurodevelopmental pathway and diagnosis that Sean referred to. So we're developing autistic networks, and there will be a new youth group launched soon, and working with Sean, I'll also work creating that. Somebody's moving my slides around here. I don't know where my slide has gone. I can't see it. There we go. So that's kind of what we do. You'll get the model, but I wanted to give you an extract of where the Scottish Government is right at the moment, because they've reviewed the strategy, which has been ongoing for a long number of years, and Sean's been involved with that. And it's the Different Minds One Scotland, and they're taking a three-staged approach to the new autism strategy, and that's to create a clearer understanding of autism and dispel the myths. You'll see a lot of promotion from the Scottish Government, and we're asking organisations, Borders College, anyone to promote that on their social media, just so we can raise the understanding of autism. And we want to create a deeper understanding of acceptance and support being led by the autistic people. We really need the voice of the autistic people to actually tell us what it is that matters to them most. They have to drive the changes locally, because as much as all autistic people are different, all their needs and what they want to change is different. So we have to get it right and create that kind of society and language. And we want to increase the value of autistic people, and that's things like meaningful employment, jobs, lifestyle, confidence, all the really crucial things that make us feel happy with our lives. This is a great snapshot of what autism is defined as within that document, which is a neurological difference. And it's just put simply, the autistic brain works different from the non-autistic brain. They see the world differently from us. And it's more important that we all understand more about autism, both what it is, but more importantly, what it isn't. Next slide. I don't know who's in charge of slides. It's not me. The lived voice. So this is the most critical factor that came out from the Scottish Government, that we had to drive local change by local needs, and that's by the lived voice. They have to be the drivers for change. And these are the values that were set by Scottish Government, that we value the voices of autistic people with their lived experience, given their own insight into their own personal journey with autism, that we value the voice of young people to help them co-design the vision here in the Scottish Borders, and how their role and lived experience can influence, for example, attending Borders College. These are probably the most critical drivers for us at the moment, and that's why I'm so pleased to have the likes of Sean, we had Kelsey this morning, and Eve here today. So the last slide is just their names, if we move on. And these are the most important people to listen to, not me, it's the voices of Sean, and Kelsey and Eve, who are on this call today. And the last slide is just my contact details if anybody wants to get in contact with me to discuss resources or anything at all related to autism.
Thank you very much, Pauline. So we're going to go into our panel discussion now. We've got a few questions lined up for our guests. The first one, and this one is maybe for Sean and Eve in particular. What is autism in your own words? Should we go to Sean first, please?
Hi. Yeah, it's funny getting this question the second time around and then think, oh, maybe I should give a different answer. Yeah, well, I think I said, autism. It's not like a thing I made up. It's a word that has been applied to me, and applied to me initially, anyway, by a psychiatrist, to somehow, yeah, but name that difference. And I'm not the only one. I think, what is it? Just over 1% of the population, I think, is deemed to be autistic. Now, as to what that means, that's ever changing. And so where I'm currently at, as far as I see it, I didn't like a lot of the negatives when I first was diagnosed, and that was just 10 years ago. Words like disorder and talking about deficits, impairments. I don't like to think of myself as having deficits and impairments and some kind of disorder. And I think it's now pretty much understood, although I don't know if everybody's up to speed, that it is, in fact, a neurodevelopmental difference. So that means we have a different brain. It's developed differently. And as a consequence, kind of ends up a bit different. And different brain means different perception, different processing, different responses, different attitudes, just seeing the world differently. Maybe we're all grouped as autistic because we have certain similarities. I think up to now, those have only really been observed as behavioral things, perhaps differences socially, differences in communication. These are the sort of diagnostic areas. But we can look a bit closer now, I think, and even recent studies looking at specifically the differences in autistic brains have shown that it really is a different brain. Physically, it's a different brain. Neurologically, it's a different brain. They've scanned and compared. There was one study not too long ago, what they call neurotypical, that's everybody else, brains and autistic brains, and monitored the brain activity when performing certain tasks. And it shows pretty clearly that you can give the same task to a bunch of neurotypicals and a bunch of autistics, and the autistics can, on occasions, use a completely different parts of the brain. They'll be using less of the brain, and they may actually be completing the task more efficiently. Now, that's kind of where I'm at. That's where the differences are at. As to why, well, I'd win a Nobel Prize for that answer, probably.
Thank you very much, Sean. I'm going to come back actually on something that you said there around appropriate use of language, but I want to go to Eve now to ask the same question. Eve?
Autism is a lifelong condition which affects how I communicate and interact with the world.
Thank you very much, Eve. Yeah, so Sean, you mentioned appropriate use of language, and this is a theme that has come up at the college quite a lot. And I know that in my role, I get quite a few requests from staff asking what language should we use when we're working with autistic people. What do you have any thoughts on that or any advice on that for staff at the college?
Are we talking, because this has come up in other areas, are we talking specifically about how you refer to autistic people in the first place? Yeah. Well, for me, the language, it has meaning. So if you refer to somebody as a person who has autism, that's very different from referring to somebody as an autistic person. they're actually coming from two different perspectives. So the language you use actually, in a certain way, helps to frame your attitude, if you like, or your perspective. So I don't believe I have autism. It's not like, were it not for this horrible thing called autism, I would be fine. I'd be pretty much like everybody else. So, you know, I mean, there are charities certainly in the United States, and there may be people in Britain as well, who are pushing for, they have this idea that they can cure it, you know, like it's some kind of illness. In fact, I think even as recent, well, when was it? 2011, I think, in the US, they launched what they called the Brain Initiative, which was basically a lot of money bunged at research, aiming to, and I think the phrase was spoken by Mr. Obama, to treat, cure, or prevent diseases such as, and autism was mentioned as one of those things. So I'd like to think of myself anyway as an autistic person. So that, and starting from just that language, I think if you can not forget about the difficulties that autistic people can face, and that can be problematic and can cause confusion and misunderstanding on both sides. But if you can grasp the idea that it's fundamentally a different brain, and also that, you know, us being different means that we will have been through our life from very early on treated differently and regarded differently. Sorry, I've gone a bit off topic there. You wanted to know about language, but I'd start with those two different perspectives. So autistic people, or a lot of people may still believe or still think that it's people who have autism.
Thank you, Sean. That's really interesting. I think as well, a bit of advice would be, if you're at all uncertain, just ask the person in front of you how they would like to be referred to. Do you think that's fair?
Yeah, I was just going. Sorry, I was just going to say that the use of language within autism has changed so much, and it's rapidly changing. We've delivered training sessions on it, and it's so vast. And there are core fundamentals that you should be using, and I can certainly give you access to resources and on how to frame your language around autistic people. But when all else fails, you can't get it right for everybody, and everybody with autism has different ways of identifying themselves within that. For some autistic people, from young people, like young Kelsey that was in the group this morning, she found it very hard to accept herself as autistic, because she thinks of autism as somebody who is very complex autism and, you know, has severe needs, and she can't connect with that. So she didn't really want to use that terminology. So when all else fails, just ask the young person, ask the person, and don't be afraid to ask.
Yeah, and that goes, by the way, for anyone with any identity. If you're at all in doubt, ask, because Pauline, you're absolutely right. Language is constantly evolving and changing, so it's very difficult to provide a guide that's going to stay the same forever. So yeah, okay. I'm going to ask my next question, and Eve, I wondered if you could answer this one. Are you able to tell us a bit about your experiences of going to school? Were there any challenges that you faced, or anything that worked really well that you can tell us about?
Okay. I have been homeschooled for 7 years because of bullying. When I was 13, I found out I had autism. I have a lot of anxiety and was very scared of other children my age. I'm looking forward to going to college, but also scared about being bullied, not managing to keep up with other people doing my coursework, not being able to talk to other students, understanding what I'm told to do, and getting into trouble for not understanding.
Thanks, Eve. So yeah, I think Kelsey in the session that we had earlier was also talking about how overwhelming it is to come into an environment like college. If it's busy, if there's lots of things happening, which often during the first few weeks there is quite a lot of stuff happening, and also that anxiety around making friends and meeting peers. Is there anything that we as a college could be doing to make our environment more inclusive to autistic people, whether that's the sort of wider college or within the classroom, within learning and teaching? Does anyone have any examples of how we can make more inclusive environments? I'll leave it open to anyone to come in.
Can I just, I could talk to you for hours, but one of the things that's really important is it's often people with autism, they like to have that visual, they like to predicting where things are, where rooms are, where exits are, where toilets are, is really, really critical. And one of the projects he did with parents was that to have that visual overview so that they can see visually and prepare for that environmental home visits, like visits to the campus as well, would be really vital. But I mean, there's a whole raft of stuff that we could write, and I wonder about Eve, who has started that process, if she can think about that, and is it positives there, Eve, or anything that you would like to suggest, or Mum?
I haven't started college yet, but I think I will need staff to check that I'm okay and help me to talk to other students.
Eve is so worried about getting bullied at college because when she left school at the age of 10, she was so severely bullied that she would see children in the street and just freeze. I think the thing is with autism that a lot of people, I have 2 children with autism who have very severe anxiety issues. So just walking down the street is a huge challenge for them. The noises, the smells, just everything puts them very much heightened with everything. So the one thing that I know that Eve probably will have a challenge with is at lunchtime, where she goes, where she sits. Is she going to be able to sit in that room, in the room with everybody else, with all those noises, and just feeling that Eve's attitude is that if she doesn't talk to people, people aren't going to bully her, and that maybe that they won't want to be her friend. Recently, with branching out, they've had a youth group where they've had some other children come to the youth group to actually join in, and Eve was absolutely so excited that somebody wanted to be her friend. And I thought that was just amazing, because Eve, it's been such a long journey for her with the bullying, that we didn't know she had autism until she was 13. So she very much masked her autism. To the point that I know when she was at school, quite often she would copy other children just so, because she didn't want anybody to know that she couldn't manage, and she struggled so much. So the fact that we homeschooled was basically because school was not an option for her at that time. She was just so traumatized by school, and this going to college is going to be such a huge step. We're so excited for her to come to college. At the moment, she's got her little dog Odie sitting here with her, haven't you?
Yeah.
So
Eve,
Eve,
can I ask you to share with us, because I know you've been to the Newtown campus, so can you share with us your first impressions of Newtown and the campus?
It looked really good.
You loved all the animals, didn't you? It was, and the fact it's not a huge college as well, I think is going to be really good for her. She's incredibly talented. She has done her gold good citizen in dog training. She does dog agility, dog obedience, and she just loves animals so much. And they've actually been used as, she has them as her emotional support dogs as well, but she now doesn't need them quite as often as she did. She was so scared of going everywhere that Odie is one of her emotional support dogs. So, and we had another dog, Scrappy, that sadly just passed away a couple of weeks ago. So, and they have really helped her so much, but she also has helped them. So it's been such a big step for you, isn't it, going to the idea of going to college? And we thought it might happen in a few more years' time, but she is just so excited for this, you know, and I know she will work so hard, but she is worried about the work about keeping up with everybody else because she has dyslexia as well. So, and also making friends as well. So when she's in a group, and if you say, oh, get into groups, I think Eve will think, I don't know who I should be with, because she'll be really scared to be, you know, will somebody want to be my partner, you know? So
and I think that's something that we need to be very aware of during induction.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And also because my daughter has been homeschooled for so long as well, I know that when they go to college, you consider them as adults, but a lot of people with autism also very much rely on their parents a lot more, and she will want me, because if she's having a hard day, the first person she's going to phone is me and let me know that she's struggling at college. She probably won't let you guys know, and you might not know that she's having a hard time, then she'll try and cope as much as she possibly can. And won't be surprised if when she comes home, I then see the meltdown of how hard college has been for her all day. So I think the fact that you will need to make sure that they're coping okay and doing all right, and just that she knows who, if she's having a hard time, who she goes to. And I think also when you do have a meltdown, my daughter, sometimes she does hit herself. Some people think that's aggressive, or it's not, it's just them. It's her way of saying this is just too much. I'm overwhelmed by all of this and I need help. And it was mentioned in the last session, it's really important that you do ask, are you okay? Because the first thing people think is, I need to avoid that person because they're struggling with that. And I know, isn't it, Eve, you would want somebody to tell you, ask you if you're okay. Yeah, so.
Pauline, I'll come to you, and then I see there's a couple of hands up, so we'll come to Katrina and then Alan after that. Pauline, go for it.
Yeah, these sessions definitely need to be longer, but however, we can't underestimate Eve. I've known Eve for a long number of years. I've had the joy of knowing Eve, and Eve has overcome some huge challenges. But when I think about Eve, I think for what's helped Eve is having that supportive environment, you know, her parents, and having that support that she can do this. One of the things that Eve talked about and Kelsey did as well was the time when they're not in lessons. The break times and the lunch times are particularly difficult times for people because it's free time. There's choices to be made, and that, I think that would be really of value for Borders College to look at that. You know, I worked not with any of the people in this group, but with another family whose son was attending Borders College, and he could not cope with lunch times, and his parent drove down to the college and sat in the car, and he came out and had lunch with his mum and then went back because he just could not have that social engagement with his peers. So these are just things to consider. But
thanks, Pauline. Katrina, do you want to come in?
Yeah, hi. Just a personal note from myself. I started at the college just over 18 months ago now. I'm the health and safety manager. And for me, even though I've been working all of my adult life in different industries, coming to college was a different experience for me. And I started in COVID with all these little people in boxes on the screen. So to come to a campus when you haven't been at school for many, many years, it's going to be obviously a scary moment. But I just think Newtown campus is such a lovely, supportive campus. I'm not saying Gala isn't, but I spend every Wednesday at Newtown as part of my job role. And it's just a totally different energy there. It's a different experience. There's such a supportive bunch of people there. You can go to any member of staff, anybody will help and advise you there. And it is just a great place to be. I mean, people taking their dogs to work, and it's just, it's like, to me, to go to Newtown, it's like I'm having a day off. I'm not, but it feels like I'll go and feed the rabbits at lunchtime. I'll go and walk and have a look at the ducks. And it's just a real escape for me to go to Newtown on a Wednesday. So it's a fabulous campus, and I'm sure you'll be really, really happy there. But any member of staff will help and support you whenever you need it. Never be afraid to ask anybody there, because they're a real great bunch of people.
That's a lovely message, Katrina. Thank you. And I hope that's really reassuring, Eve, to hear that. Alan, do you want to come in?
Yeah, first of all, can I just say I think Eve will be a great pupil, a great student, and I think Borders College will be very fortunate to have her. So best of luck, Eve. My question is, does the college's induction process identify whether someone has a condition such as autism? And if so, what do we do differently?
Alan, do you want to come in and answer that one?
Yeah, well, the learning support team, as in Eve's case, we try and contact them well in advance. So, for instance, Lee, who's the learning support advisor for the animal care courses, Lee's already spoken to Eve and her mum. We're going to be arranging for Eve to go to the Newtown campus for a day, so she can see the classroom and see the place busy. So we'll have those contacts with them. If they need support during induction, we can arrange for a member of the team to be there to help them, to escort them. What a lot of young people will say to us, no, I don't want that to point me out as being different. So we try to make sure the teachers will know who's coming in, because there'll be activities. So there'll be activities to walk around the college and find things in small groups. And teachers will try to mix the students up so that they're getting to know all members of the class. And I think the one thing to take away is the majority of the students coming, they're not all coming in with friendship groups. So even the neurotypical students, they're coming in. It's a new environment for them as well. Not as scary as for a young autistic student. The whole environment and the noise and the bustle and what's going on next. So we do try to manage it. But I think Amy and I we were talking sort of in between, and we're aware that the induction process is something we probably need to look at.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, thanks, Alan. That was a good answer. And I think from what I've heard, budding up at break times is kind of like something that we really need to be focusing on.
And we do. I mean, in the Gala campus, I mean, in Newtown, it's a lovely campus, as Katrina said. It's got its own little canteen there. But again, a nice day, you can go and sit outside on the grass. So there's different places you can go within Newtown, and staff are always around. At Gala, it's slightly different, where it's a big, busy campus. Well, busy. It's not busy at the moment because of the COVID, but again, it's much busier. So we do say the students here in Gala, if you're really not coping, go down to the Student Advice Centre, because there's places they can sit there. We have our own room, which is next to the Advice Centre, is room 19. We can take students in there. The library is a nice little seating area. Again, we'll show students the library and say, okay, you can sit here in the library. If you just need that 5 minutes just to sit and refocus. Sorry, Pauline, I'll let you come in.
No, I was just going to say that there had been conversations with Kelsey and Sean and I and about the induction process into college as being somewhat, we could look at that again, and it can be sometimes for the young person who doesn't want to disclose that they have autism. It could be for the young person who is waiting for a diagnosis of autism, and we're asking them to share very personal information about them and their condition, which you know, our young people have said they find that quite difficult when they've not had a relationship with somebody to put into a box how their condition affects them, and they might not know how it affects them in an education setting. So that has been raised as an issue, and even that, you know, that's a great piece of work to look at and explore going forward. A really good piece of work to explore.
I mean, can I just ask Sean? How do you address this, Sean? You know, so say you were going to Edinburgh College for a course. I mean, how do you address it into a classroom for the first time?
If I were doing that, well, one thing that I know about that's happened at Edinburgh College is, I think in 2019 they tried out the idea of like a transition day in the summer at some point before the academic year got kicked off. Anybody who well, could be somebody autistic who might have reservations, I suppose, similar to what Eve's talking about.
Was that activity based?
I don't believe so. No, I think it was done as one-to-one. So right. The autistic person, say a prospective student, would come and meet with I think it's learning support, and they'd give them a good walk around the building, show them what sort of areas they might need to know about, and where they may be studying, and be able to, you know, get answers to any questions that they might have, just so that they've got a sense when they finally come along of what the layout is, what they might have more of an idea of what to expect, and I think they've carried that on. So something like that initially, for me, for instance, if I say we're going to Borders College as a mature student, very mature student, you know, I mean, I would want to know the layout for one thing. I'd want to see like what the light's like. I'd want to know where the exits are, where the toilet is, all those things. So there's that as a practical start. And also it would maybe give an opportunity to actually say, well, these are the issues that I am aware of, that I would probably, or you know, not necessarily, but there's a potential that I would have difficulty with this and this in this environment. I
mean, Katrina, did you want to come in on something there? No.
I think I've left my hand up. Sorry.
Oh, sorry, Katrina.
Sorry, that sounded a bit dull, but I guess just lots of information, as much information as possible before anything starts. So, and yeah, transition seems to be the key. So you can do a lot of work beforehand that will pay off when it comes to it, whereas just arrive, you know, my fears of going to secondary school actually were probably similar to Eve's going to college, because my previous experience had been bullying, lots of, up till the age of 10, when I was actually pulled out of school because I couldn't, it was not working. So I'm actually surprised that still continues. But it, you know, so the fears, if you like, are rooted in experience, in the individual's experience. So they're not unreasonable, they're not irrational. They're
It's really how we can make it positive, isn't it?
Yeah. And I suppose that means that you have to work that little bit harder with autistic people.
Alan, did you want to come back in?
Yeah, I like what Sean has described, and I just wondered do we do anything like that?
Yeah, we do bring we will bring students in. I mean, I'm usually here for most of July, and I know other advisors will bring young people in, talk about what their needs are, show them round. Any concerns, we'll deal with any concerns, and hopefully try and sort of ease them into the college, as I say, as positively as possible. But they don't, as Pauline said, they don't all declare. Sorry, Amy.
Yeah, I just wanted to come in on that actually. Pauline's point around the fact that not every student who has a disability will disclose that. And actually, what might be a really interesting piece of work and a really valuable piece of work for us would be to work with you, Sean, Eve, Kelsey, Pauline, when we're planning our induction, to think about what can we do to make the college the most accessible, most inclusive place for autistic people, because we don't know. The truth is that we don't know how many students might end up along the line disclosing that. We can't guarantee that we're necessarily going to be able to put that support in place right at the beginning of term based on what the student is sharing with us. So I think it would be really interesting to get your input on what our current induction looks like and maybe what we need to do better going forward. I'm aware of time, but I'm not going to stop the session bang on 11:45 because I've got one other question, and I think the session's recorded, so if you do need to leave, the session will be there to look back on. But I just wanted to check, Alan, the chat has disappeared from my Teams page.
Oh,
are there any questions in there from staff that would be worth picking up on just now? Even just one just now, Alan, if there's anything.
Yeah, I can't see it.
Okay, that's. Oh, you can't see the chat?
No.
Oh, I don't know where it's gone. Apologies.
There's no questions in the chat, Amy.
Oh,
All
okay.
right, thanks, Pauline. So a final question then. I wondered if the panel could share one key message about supporting autistic people. What would be the key message that you would want to tell us as a college about the way that we support autistic people?
I mean, I'm happy to
go for
start.
it, Pauline.
I mean, the one key message I would give is that we don't know everything, and sometimes I think as professionals we feel we're failing people if we don't know everything about everything, but we can't expect to know that, and just to take that pressure off yourself as a teacher. And it's always just don't, you'll never have all the answers, you can't solve all the issues, but to have that embracive attitude to ask the young person, like Eve said and Sean said, are you okay? Are you okay? Is there something you want to tell me? Just to be that. Our young people have highlighted safety and trust as the two biggest key drivers to make them feel better about themselves. And we need to make sure they're in that safe environment. So if we've got that attitude that we're here as teachers, but we're learning every day about our pupils, our students, then just embrace them. You can't know everything, and ask the questions if you don't know. It's, I don't know all the questions about autism, and I'm the autism community coordinator. I let the people that I work with drive me and teach me what I need to know.
Sean, Alan, I'll come to you in a little second, but Sean, have you got anything on
that? No, I think it's pretty well covered. There's in the first session, I think I said something about language, which we looked at earlier anyway in this session, and I don't know, but I think it's maybe an area that's not looked at closely enough, is the confusion and the misunderstanding that can be caused with what should we call it, the sloppy use of language. I think you may often find that, well, it's been said that autistic people instinctively sort of take language very literally, and all these sort of metaphors are no good, like pull your socks up, that kind of thing. In fact, 'cause I used pull your socks up because that was said to me when I was younger at one point, and I thought it was really amusing because I wasn't wearing any socks at the time. But you know, so I couldn't. But it can be very, very subtle, and so certain problems. I think Kelsey was talking about at one point, maybe not in this session, but a previous time, about the difficulty of, say, making sense out of a form, just an application form or a form that you've got to fill in. And so there are lots of issues around language, not just in you know, what does this mean, but also what does the, you know, what am I supposed to understand this terminology? So you might find that there are people who maybe are autistic who don't disclose because it's framed as a disability in a context maybe that's on a form. If you don't want to think of yourself as having a disability, or you don't want to be treated like somebody, or as you see it, you know, who has a disability, then maybe you won't declare because the language is wrong in the first place. Yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Thanks, Sean. That was great. And Eve and Emma, do you have any last comments on that before I go to Alan?
Just because you have autism doesn't mean I am less important than anyone else. We often have amazing talents.
Thank you, Eve. Emma, did you have anything that you wanted to say there before I move?
Just that I know for Eve, if she is having a hard time, sometimes the things that they are really talented in, like Eve with her dogs, that subject is just like the thing that actually helps her to calm herself down. If you started talking to her about dogs now, if any of you come up to her and tell her you don't like dogs, that's really not a good thing, because Eve likes everybody that likes dogs. So if you want her to like her, like you have to tell her you love dogs. But it's also really important because that just really, it just helps her calm herself down, doesn't it, Eve? Yeah. I know, because Eve spent a lot of time in the Sick Kids Hospital since she's been 10 years old. So, and that has helped her so much with all her hospital appointments and everything. So, and just really just making sure that she's okay, because I know you're there to educate her, but also she is somebody that, and many children and adults who with autism do need to know that there's somebody there just to check in that they're doing okay, because because they are so anxious. So that's just all I wanted to say.
Thanks, Emma. Eve, you'll be in great company over at Newtown. There's plenty of dog lovers over there, and dogs as well, which is great.
I had said to them that if Eve was struggling, that I would bring her dog over at lunch times. I don't know if people will let us, but Odie is so well behaved and he's so good with all animals. But I'm hoping that she'll manage and she won't need that. But it was just an option if she was finding it hard for the first few weeks. So
yeah. Okay, Alan, I'll just go to you lastly.
Yeah, sorry, I'll just chip in there. One more thing. So if a student discloses that they do have autism at the start of their term, is it appropriate or helpful to assign them or allocate a mentor?
We haven't. It's something I think we need to, again, there's something else I think we need to look at. The Learning Support Advisor would sort of pick them up and hopefully communicate all to the staff. I think something that Amy will probably talk about again is how do we sort of make that happen? Because obviously, if I take we spoke about induction, the student association are very busy at that induction time, so we maybe need to look within the classrooms. Certainly, the teaching staff, they're all getting to know the students, so there may be a way we can look at that. For students, for autistic students, that we get peer mentors within the groups. Sorry, Pauline, do you want to come in on that?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask about the environment of Borders College. It's been a few years since I was at Borders College. In fact, it was when I was sitting in the Melrose Road up there. This is going to get knocked down, but I just wondered about the environment because, you know, it's easier for people to disclose things about themselves if they feel safe to do so. And I just wondered, is there things around the college environment that's promoting a positive message about autism? You know, is there anything like that? Because that's a really good starting point.
Yeah, well, to be honest, I'd have to say I don't think there is. So again, you know, this is where sort of, you know, Sean, Kelsey, and Eve, I think, need to sort of give a bit more advice. You know, to show this is a positive environment.
Sorry, the environment is a huge factor for autistic people because they're processing that all the time, and that takes a lot. But having something within that environment that symbolises safety or understanding would really help them immensely.
Yeah, and I think that's where the kind of relationship that we're building with you, Pauline, will be really valuable for us, because I think it's fair to say that the conversations we've had with you all this today have been quite challenging and have made us really reflect on what more we need to be doing for autistic people at Borders College, and where there is a huge amount of support. We've got fantastic facilities and support available. There is always more that we could be doing. And I think speaking to all of you and making sure that we're listening to your voices is so important in that journey. Unless, does anyone have any final comments before we close the session? Okay. Oh, Sean, were you going to come in? Sorry. I'm limited edition. Oh, what a good way to end the session. Thank you so much, everybody. And we'll make this available. We'll make this recording available for anyone who would like to share it with their teams or rewatch it. And just a wee reminder, Joanne's giving everyone a round of applause. And also, there's a, sorry, what was I saying? There is a survey going out to all staff who've attended a CPD session today. If you could please fill it in with your comments based on this session, that would be so helpful for us at the college and for Pauline in the work that she does. And yeah, so thank you very much, everyone, for coming along. And thank you to our panel as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Cheers.
Bye.